Hello everyone, my name is Alex. I'm a 2000 rated over-the-board chess player, and in this series we're trying to climb to as high a rapid rating as we possibly can while explaining my thought process as best as I can for your education and entertainment. Here we have a Slav defense. I like to start with c6 because a lot of people transpose into the Caro Kann with e4. A lot of people also go bishop to f4, going into some interesting lines after queen b6. But my opponent goes for an exchange Slav, and this is very much known for being a really boring opening. But I feel like recently I've been finding some more interesting ideas with it. So here, don't play knight to c6 because white actually has e4 in that position, and white's doing relatively well. So knight to f6 stops e4, but my opponent's really trying to insist on e4 by going pawn to f3. Okay, that's a new one. I'm not sure I know that. So okay. Let me think here. So after knight c6, e4. If he takes back, we win the d4 pawn. So d5, I would assume. Then I have to be careful, because if I play a move like knight b4, then queen a4 picks up my knight. I could go to e5. He takes back. And then material is equal, and he has a big center. Okay. What about bishop f5? It does leave b7 a bit weak, so worth knowing. If he tries e4, then I just win a pawn. If bishop f5, g4, bishop back, g5, knight d7, he can execute e4. Oh, also that hangs the d5 pawn. Okay, I'm not going to lie, I don't know this line. I don't know it. Now, what we could do is be really boring and more solid with the move e6. And I think that's what I'm going to go for, because I don't know this line. So, as a result of that, I'm going to try and play some kind of structure that I have some familiarity with. I think bishop to b4 makes sense. So if takes, I can play knight takes. If e5, I can drop the knight back and basically play it like a French, except the pawn is on f3. So it's kind of misplaced. Similar to how I like to play against the fantasy Caro Kann, by sort of inviting white to play e5 and saying, okay, well, your pawn on f3 makes no sense now. You're going to have to put it on f4 most likely anyway. So, yeah, knight back to d7. My bishop is fine. It's not getting hit with any forks. Obviously, my knight is covering the check, but even before that, I just had knight to c6. So I would assume this probably isn't the best variation for black, but I don't need the best variation. I just need playable, because I don't want to fall for any tricks. So let's go knight c6, applying pressure to the center in classic French fashion. I suppose f6 is going to be a move in some lines, trying to crack the white center open. And d4 could become quite weak after something like taking queen takes, you know. d4 could be a target. Also, queen to b6 is interesting. Queen to b6 is interesting. And if white... So let's say something like knight g to e2, queen to e6... Sorry, queen b6 in castles. There we might have the move knight takes e5 because the d-pawn is pinned to the king. So, I mean, we would probably be winning this anyway, because there's no bishop b5 check opening up the queen's attack. Okay, queen b6 again looks nice, because we are threatening to take, because the bishop hangs on e3. This is the problem with moving the f-pawn so early, by the way. So I'm trying to punish that. So, okay. Queen a5. This bishop needs defending. So let's say queen d2. Can I get away with this? I don't know. That's difficult. What I could do, though, is if queen b6, queen d2, I could play knight d takes e5. And have to take. The bishop isn't hanging, but I do have d4. If bishop f2, pinning the pawn to my queen, I can take, and if he takes me, I take here with check, and then I take the bishop. That looks really interesting. Let's go queen b6. Now, this is an adventurous move, but I'm also a bit scared of castling kingside, because with my knight kicked to d7, I basically have no defense on my king. I also failed to properly consider ideas of queen h4. You know, something like knight takes, bishop takes, queen h4 check, and picking up the bishop. But the problem is there is bishop back to f2, so I don't think the tactics quite work out anyway. Now, what are we doing against knight to b2? Sorry, knight g2 e2. What's the plan against that? Well, of course, yeah, then we just take, and if take, the bishop hangs. That's the whole idea. So I think we're punishing white for going for this type of structure. This is interesting because we played a we played a Slav in the opening, obviously, a Slav defense exchange variation. This position looks completely like a French defense. But with the pawn on f3, it is incredibly reminiscent of a fantasy Caro Kann. So this is basically a French, a Caro, and a Slav. Like mixing ideas from all of them. And this is one of the things that I really like to do when I learn openings, is not to memorize all the lines and try to understand the ideas behind lots of the moves, because your opponents will play weird things against you and you need to be able to adapt. Now, this f3 move, I don't know this move. I have previously played this knight c6 here, here, and here. I've had that before, and I didn't like it. It was very uncomfortable. So I know I don't want to do that. So by getting into this type of structure, it incorporates ideas that I know from French defenses and fantasy Caro Kanns, right? I'm trying to incorporate those ideas in. And in the fantasy Caro, in the line that I like to play, which my full Caro Kann course, you can find first link in the description, by the way, I like to meet the fantasy with a very quick e6, which means that my bishop is locked in on c8, but I'm kind of used to those positions. That doesn't particularly bother me too much. So, okay, another move we need to consider is f4. I've been blathering on for ages. f4 stops this because he can take back with the pawn. Okay, that doesn't solve his problems. Take, take, and take. Or probably this knight, actually. Then I'm just winning. I assume he probably only calculated bishop back, because normally you don't want to trade off your dark squared bishop in these lines. And to be fair, white probably does have some compensation. But he's just losing a pawn. And rook b1 doesn't work because knight takes d3 comes with check. Now, which knight do I want to take with? Because it looks obvious that I should take with this knight, because it's less active than this one. But I'm not entirely sure. Because, no, I think I should take with this knight. Yeah, okay. So the tactics work out in our favor, because this pawn is on f3. If this pawn was back on f2, white would not have to be concerned about these ideas, but he does, because the pawn is misplaced and the knight can't get to its normal development square. So yeah, rook b1 I think is the critical move. And then I have to take. Yeah, I have to take that, because if I move my queen, you can take, and I can't take the bishop. So rook b1, knight d3, queen d3. Queen a5, I assume, applying pressure to the pawns. c4 can't be played because the pawn is pinned to the king. I think that's pretty reasonable. I know my bishop still sucks, but we can actually look for b6, bishop a6, and this will come with tempo on the queen and also potentially stop white from castling. And that's actually a really nice diagonal, coming to like c4 or something. Also stopping c4 breaks. So I think our bishop is actually quite promising. Now, white doesn't have to go rook b1. And he also doesn't have to take. He could develop a knight. Yeah, he goes rook b1, though. So here we're forced. We have to take this. No need to calculate. We already know. And then queen a5, I think, is the move I like. You may be considering queen a6, offering a queen trade. But after take and take, our structure is really bad. And, like, you know, maybe we can try and get the knight into c4 there. But we do have opposite colored bishops, and I also want my bishop on a6, not a pawn on a6, regardless of the fact that the structure is bad. So we emerge from the opening upper pawn. White is still yet to castle. I'm not in a major rush to castle, I don't think, because I can see many lines where the queens could get traded. f4 on the board, that's an aggressive move. Trying to play f5, which is reasonable. What happens if I take on a3? f5. What happens if I take? Don't know. We could grab the pawn on a3. That wouldn't be terrible and come back to like d6 or something. Is this a situation where I shouldn't be looking a gift horse in the mouth and just taking the free pawn? Let's say take knight f3. Pawn a6. Trying to go bishop a6. Queen b5, I take with check. Bishop here. Queen c4, offering a queen trade. I don't see a reason not to do this. I mean, f5 just doesn't seem all that much. I can take it, but I can also let him take me if I really want. f5 take, my bishop goes to e6, I guess. Okay, knight f3 I wasn't so concerned about. Now I go b6. And I'm intentionally delaying my castling. Also, bishop to a6 comes in the nick of time, because if I delay it one more move, let's say white castles, he's going to go rook a1, and then I don't get bishop a6 in. Whereas if he castles now and I go bishop to a6, I skewer the queen and the rook, and there's no time for rook a1 because his queen is hanging, and after rook takes a3, I take on f1, and I'm up like 5 points of material. And I probably trap the rook with knight a5 as well. So, yeah, this is a rather nice position. We're up 2 pawns. Surprised in the opening. Again, a very interesting mix of French, Slav, and Caro. But I think this is very nice. Okay, king f2. Interesting. So now the rook isn't on f1 to be skewered. I still think bishop a6, though. If rook here, I'm happy to trade queens and play like bishop c4 or something. That's fine. Queen c2. Yeah, so he's trying to go queen here. So I thought I could go bishop to c4 in this position, followed by like knight a5, and my bishop is just locked in. Also, if rook a1, I have queen b3, trying to get a queen trade, although I guess the queen moves. I think if rook a1, I just want to retreat my queen to d6 or e7, and then I just have an easy position. I don't think white has a meaningful attack. I mean, f5 can still be played. Maybe it carries more venom because my bishop isn't watching over it, but I don't think I'm overly concerned, to be honest. Yeah, I feel like rook a1, queen b3 is too adventurous. I mean, the white queen just moves. And I'm on the verge of getting trapped. I need this diagonal to get out. And I've mentioned in quite a few of my videos, when you like go and take a potentially poisoned pawn with the queen, you always need to have a planned evacuation, a way out. You need to have a way out in mind before you're going to be taking. And for me, I was happy to take the pawn on a3 because I was like, well, I always have this diagonal. There's no good way for white to stop me from using that diagonal. So I see no reason why I shouldn't take the pawn, if that makes sense. And obviously, I figured that the bishop a6 stuff comes just in time as well. There's not enough time for rook a1. So I'm very happy with this position. Very happy. The white bishop isn't particularly good. It's locked in by its own pawns. The only thing I really need to be concerned about is f5. That is white's entire game plan from my perspective. I don't see anything else that's particularly meaningful. There's no, like, white needs pawn breaks. White needs pawn breaks because I'm up 2 pawns. He needs to try and create problems for me. Other than f5, I don't see any pawn breaks. So I'm feeling pretty good about this. On f5, what do we want to do? And he goes for it. Queen d6 looks good to me. So if take, I can take with the queen and keep my pawn structure intact. Because if I take with the f pawn, it's quite a weak pawn because I can't advance it. Now, if I take and queen takes, I could take on c3. I'm asking for trouble, I feel like, after something like knight e5. There's not really any need for that. So, what about castles? And if take, I open up the f-file for my rook. Maybe there's knight g5 ideas, though. That's kind of scary. Yeah, I think queen d6. My queen wants to come back anyway. I don't really want the c3 pawn. It's not an impressive pawn. So let's just come back. Maybe I can even play e5. Although, giving this bishop this square after the trade might not be the best plan of action. It also wouldn't be completely ridiculous to castle queenside. Because white has no pawn breaks on the queen side. There's no pawn breaks. Both his pawns are blockaded, and there's no good way to break the blockade. If knight back to d2 trying to take the bishop, I have 2 choices. I can lock it in with b5 or play knight a5. So if knight takes, I have a beautiful outpost for the knight. So I have a couple of options there. g3, okay, preparing this. Take, queen e6. Queen back. Castles. e5, take. Bishop here. I don't want to give up g7. Okay, if castles, bishop f5, f4 even. I guess just queen e7 or queen d7. That should be fine. If castles, pawn f6, take. That's kind of annoying. Take, knight e7. Then his knight can come to e5. Take, queen e6. Queen back, queen e4. Oh, that's interesting, actually. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. I want a queen trade, obviously, but white isn't going to give it to me. He's not going to just let me trade queens with him. Because that's the last thing he wants, really. Because he's going to be down 2 pawns. And my pawns are pretty strong on the queen side. I'm also well aware that these are aligned for a skewer, but I have no good way of controlling the d3 square. And I shouldn't just be looking for cheap tactics either. I should be trying to find concrete ways to win this. So, okay. Queen e6. If take, I mean, that's basically game over. I just play like king d7, bring the rook over, or this rook over, whatever. And white has nothing. He can try and hold some kind of opposite color bishop position, but I don't see it. My bishop can maneuver to e4 or something. So the queen could go to g5. Just h3. Sorry, h6 even. Queen moves. I could maneuver my bishop over if I want. I could just castle and play rook e8. I guess he just goes rook e1, but... what else? So if queen h5, queen g6, I assume. Yeah. Now, putting pressure on the rook, but more importantly, looking for a queen trade. Queen h4. Castles. There's no knight e5, because I'll just take it. He can try and hold that opposite color bishop position, but I don't think he has enough. I'm up 2 pawns. I don't think he can draw that. He can try, though. He could try. That might be a good way for him to play the position. What else? Yeah, queen h4. I can't force a queen trade. I shouldn't spend too much time trying. My queen is well placed. I could get queen c2 check. If the king goes to the back rank, the rook hangs. Queen c2. Best move looks like bishop d2 to me to defend c3. Not sure I'm getting anywhere with that. Here threatening this. I mean, it feels very cheap. Just rook e1. Could try this. Queen just moves. I think I should just castle. Get out of the center. Rook e8 is begging to be played. Then queen c2 would have a threat. So if bishop d2, I have rook e2. And white's position falls apart. I just need to bring my pieces in, really. I'm also well aware this queen has no entry on e7. I'm covering. So I'm making sure he can't infiltrate. If knight e5, I can probably snap it and play queen c2. Yeah, because then there's no bishop d2. So actually, this knight can't really move. So let's say rook h2 e1. That looks very reasonable. Rook f to e8. Or maybe... Yeah. Because the rook can't go to f1, so I don't really have to be too concerned about the f7 pawn. Because he can't attack it on the f-file very easily. So rook f e8. Rook h e1. Rook f e8. How does he continue? I could also consider queen f5, stopping the king from moving too easily because the knight hangs. I could also try this maneuver to put pressure on the knight. Queen f4. Okay. Maybe he's trying to come to c7? Everything's defended, though. Okay. If here, then I have this. So let's do that. Yeah, queen c7. Queen c2 check. If the king moves to the back rank, the rook hangs. If the knight blocks, c3 hangs. And then if he takes my knight, his bishop hangs. If his bishop blocks, then rook e2 check. The king has to move to the back rank, and then the rook is hanging, the bishop is hanging, the position is completely lost. I probably just win everything. Obviously, I have to be aware my rook is under attack on a8, but I don't think white has time to ever take it. So, yeah, we just need to bring the pieces to the party. If white plays something like rook e1, I assume I double up, and rook e7 would also cover the c7 square. d6 is covered by the queen. We don't have to be concerned about that. If the knight comes into e5, I assume we snap. h4. Okay. I mean, still queen c2? No? Interesting. I could also just play h5. But I'm creating hooks, maybe. h5, maybe he can try and go for g4. I could also double the rooks, but this check looks good. Here. If bishop blocks, check followed by some kind of double up, the rook's probably hanging anyway. Yeah, so knight d2. Rook e4 comes with tempo on the queen. The rook can't be taken because the knight is pinned. Maybe I could have gone for this immediately, followed by doubling up. I don't know. Knight d2. I could take as well. That's also a move, but I'm not sure I want it. I do have to consider if rook here, I can guess I can just take and then take. Oh, no, sorry, I saved the queen. Okay, if here and here, then I take. Because if take, I take. And the white position falls apart. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's go rook e4. So everything needs to come with tempo. If queen c7, can I go rook e3? Because I'm slightly concerned that after rook here, white could go rook counterattacking. And if I move my queen off of the second rank, then there's this. I guess maybe I can keep attacking and take with check. But then like knight f2 and it's complicated. I could maybe go to a2, but then there may be perpetuals. So I'm thinking that after queen to c7, which I assume has to be played, otherwise, I mean, where does he go? If here I double up, or d6, same idea, to attack the knight. If I do anything, he's going to kick my queen and then try and win the rook. I also have rook e6, actually. That might be stronger. Defending the knight with tempo, preparing to double up. But what happens if I take? If he takes here, I take and the game ends. If I take and he takes with the king, rook e8. King f4, I take the knight with check. King f3. King f3. What do I do then? If I take, he takes. I give check, he comes here. That's not obvious. So perhaps it's easier just to go for this. And also, bear in mind, if queen f4, rook f6 pins the queen. So he can't go back to f4, which limits the options massively. I could also give a check anyway, because if the bishop blocks, the knight hangs, because the bishop's no longer defending because it's pinned. Yeah, and now the game is over after rook f6. And my queen always has escape routes. There's loads of squares for the queen. That's not a problem. And the game is over. So I think we handled that very nicely, kind of turning white's attack against him. And you'll notice how once we'd won the queenside pawns, while I know our outside pawns here, and obviously this one's a pass pawn, while I know they're a huge asset, I didn't start pushing them because it wasn't really relevant. It wasn't really relevant. I just need to try and trade pieces because the more pieces come off the board, the more relevant they become, if that makes sense. Because once more pieces come off the board, my king is completely safe. So I don't really have to worry about my king's safety, and then I can focus on pushing the pawns and winning the game. Okay, let's go queen d3, threatening check followed by take. Bishop f4, rook e8. I mean, white. The white has nothing. White has nothing. e1. Come here. I guess the threat is take, take, and take. Also, I'm threatening take, take. Oh, the rook isn't hanging because the knight defends the rook. But there's just too many things hanging in the white position. Too many things. The king can't move because the bishop hangs. If the bishop moves to f4, check, take, take, king runs. I mean, I don't have an immediate knockout, but it's not going to be that difficult, is it? Then I probably start pushing the pawns. Get this pawn to b5 so it's nice and safe, and then start pushing. There's also that. Yeah, there's no need to be fancy. I could take with the queen to be uber solid. I think I'm going to do that. I could take with the pawn to keep my queen on a very active square. But, you know, d5, and I mean, I am completely winning, but there's no need for complications, and my opponent resigns. So, GG, we only gained 3 elo from that, because my opponent was significantly lower rated, but still a very good player. Like, 2000 is higher than the vast majority of players. So, let's jump into the analysis and see what the computer has to say. Okay, so 74.6% accuracy for my opponent, 80.3 for me. Now, the opening really confused me. So, this is obviously an exchange Slav. An f3 is a move that I have seen. e6 is okay. I know it's subpar. I know it is, but I don't know the correct approach. The best move is apparently queen b6. And on e4, de4, fe4, e5. If takes knight g4, threatening mate, and threatening e5. Queen e2 defending. Bishop b4. Yeah, I mean, I don't know any of this, obviously. So I go e6 to be solid, allowing e4. And here, bishop e4 is a mistake because of e5. Because the engine thinks that white is just crushing. But I'm kind of familiar with these structures. The engine wants me to play take, take, and then bishop b4. To be fair, that does make sense, because these pawns are going to be hard to hold on to with moves like knight c6. So I do understand that. And if, like, e5, knight d5, the only move is queen d3. If the very natural bishop to d2 is played, I have... Oh, then queen h4. Ah, right. Okay, I get it now. I will keep that in mind. So if I have this again, I will play take followed by a bishop to b4, because queen d3 is the only move. But alright, bishop b4, e5, knight d7. Bishop d3 is a blunder. Oh yeah, I completely missed this. Knight c6 is still better for black, but this is just game over. Here, take, and e5 is going to fall. If this, take, 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 I guess. Bishop d2 can't be played because the bishop hangs. So I went knight c6. Bishop e3. Here, queen to b6 is a miss. I can actually go for this straight away. Take d4. Why did I not do this? Why did I not do this? Because I saw this concept. What was my issue? I don't know. This is kind of obvious. Yeah, okay. So here f4 has to be played, which is what I was expecting, and then the game goes on. But a3 just blunders completely. Obviously, if take, then take. So rook b1. My only move is knight d3. I need to save the knight. Queen a5 is best, targeting the pawns. And after f4, taking on a3 is good. There's no need to be panicky. The engine likes knight e7. I did consider this move, stopping f5 entirely, but I didn't like this diagonal being open. Also likes b6, preparing bishop a6. If f5, then I take. Yeah, okay. Cool. I think queen a3, which is still fine. Knight f3, b6 is the best move. King f2, bishop a6. Engine likes queen a2. So the king can't go to the back ranks, I take the rook. If the queen blocks, I'll trade. If bishop d2, bishop a6 anyway. Queen e3, queen c2, trying to get a trade, I assume. Okay, so I went bishop a6, queen c2, bishop c4 is good, and then bringing the queen back to d6. Oh, I completely missed the fact I queen a2. That just forces a queen trade. Oh, no, it doesn't. Okay, yeah, well, I wouldn't like to play this position. I don't see why I'd be allowing this. I don't really know. This looks... Okay, the engine wants castles. I mean, that's just unnecessary. Queen d6 is far easier to me. So g3, ef5. Queen f5 is a mistake. Bishop f4 has to be played. Oh, that's actually nice. And after queen d7, rook e1 check. No, not rook d1. Rook e1 check. And then after king f8, I guess I go g6, king g7 maybe? Yeah. Not obvious though. The queen f5. Queen e6 offering a trade. He declines the trade. I offer him again. He declines again. And then we castle. And I'm very happy here. queen f4 is the best move. We go rook f8, which is the best response. h4. Here, rook e4 immediately is the best. And if queen c7, rook e3, if king e3, rook e8. This is basically the idea I was pointing towards later on. So queen c2, knight d2 only move. If bishop d2, then I have rook to e2 check, and the game is over. Everything is falling apart. So knight d2, rook e4. I thought he was going to go queen c7. Here I wanted rook e3. If takes, then queen d2 and the game ends. If king takes, I thought rook to e8 check. Queen c3 is also a move. After king f2, I take here. After king f3, what's the idea? I just take anyway. And if take, queen e2, king f4, rook e4, king over, and then queen g4 mate. Okay, my opponent went queen d6. Rook e3 is still winning, but I couldn't quite calculate because not everything comes with check. Because if I go for this, king takes, here, here, queen d2, it doesn't all come with check. So I'm like not entirely sure. It's not completely forced. So I thought it was easier. I mean, I had a feeling it was winning, but I thought it was easier to go rook e6. And here, queen f4 is the best move, actually. If queen back here, then rook e3, king e3, rook e8, the queen is completely out the game. And here, I'm at least winning 2 pieces for the rook, at the very, very least. So I can be sure that I'm winning this. So queen f4, I win the queen. And then, yeah, there's many moves I can play, but I thought this was the most simple. Again, dc4 is the best. But I was like, you know, d5. Like, is there anything here? Probably not, but yeah. Queen c4 is just easy, because none of the white pieces can move. If bishop f4, I mean, I'll just take. There's nothing. So my opponent resigns after queen c4. Very interesting game. I think both me and my opponent were completely lost in that opening, which, like, I would rather do, because my opponent was the one to surprise me with f3. So while I assumed e6 was subpar, I also assumed that he wouldn't know what to do, which I think was clearly correct. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to see a game in the Caro Kann Fantasy, which is relatively similar to what we had in this game, check out the video up here. And if you want to see the previous episodes of the Climb to and Beyond 2200, check out the playlist down there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in one of those videos.